Thank you for attending the regular meeting of the North Platte Public Schools Board of Education. I would like to remind you that school board meetings in Nebraska are meetings held in public, not public meetings. During the public comment section, the public may address the board on agenda items and other miscellaneous topics. The purpose of the North Platte Public School District is to prepare all students to be productive, responsible citizens in a safe, caring, supportive learning environment. Our direction is to prepare every student for success through high-quality educational programs delivered by highly effective educators who use innovative, research-based strategies in a safe, supportive environment in collaboration with family, businesses, and community members. Sheila, could you please call roll?
Matthew Pearson.
Present.
Emily Garrett.
Present.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Present.
Cindy O'Connor.
Present.
Skip Ballard.
Present.
Present.
The Nebraska Open Meetings Act legislates the methods by which public meetings in Nebraska are conducted. Information pertaining to this act is posted in the boardroom. Could I get a motion to approve the publication of the December 9th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education?
I make a motion to approve the publication of the December 9th regular meeting of Board of Education.
Second.
Roll call.
Emily Garrett.
Aye.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Ballard.
Aye.
Angela Lacy.
Aye.
Matthew Pearson.
Aye.
And that passes. Now to approve the agenda for the December 9th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
I move to approve the agenda for the December 9th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
Second.
Roll call.
Joanne Lynn Green.
Aye.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Skip Ballard.
Aye.
Angela Lacy.
Aye.
Matthew Pearson.
Aye.
Aye.
And that passes. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I tell you.
All right, we will move on to the communications portion, and I will have Mr. Spatansky with Lane and Elizabeth, who are our Bulldogs of the Month for November.
Well, tonight's a nice night to recognize two high school Bulldogs. We've got two excellent kiddos here tonight. Now, normally they can tell me who's going to go first, but tonight I'm going to have to decide for them. So tonight we're going to start with Mr. Heil, and then we'll go on with Miss Nielsen. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Lane Heil. I'm here with my mom, Christian, and my dad, RC. During my high school career, the school activities I have participated in are trap shooting and FFA. I've also been an FFA officer for the last 3 years. My sophomore year, I was the parliamentarian, junior year, the secretary, and this year I'm the chapter president. I also have held a 4.0 grade point average for the last 3.5 years, as well as joined the National Honor Society this year. My favorite experiences from high school have definitely revolved around FFA. The friendships and experiences that I've had will last me the rest of my life. After I graduate in May, I plan to continue working for my dad at Platte Valley Electric as an apprentice electrician and work towards getting my journeyman's license. Once I get my license and have some experience, I would plan to become a business partner with him. And then someday when he's ready to retire, I would like to take over the business. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Nielsen, and I'm here with my mom and dad today, Jennifer and Jeffrey Nielsen. The activities I have participated in the last 4 years of high school are I played volleyball freshman and sophomore year. I've been a part of student council sophomore, junior, and senior year, and this year I am the secretary, which has been a lot of fun because right now I'm planning for snowball. I have done swim all 4 years, and swim is just absolutely my favorite activity I've done. And I'm an NHS and I'm a class officer for the seniors. My favorite high school experience has just been being involved in the school. So I absolutely love student council and swim. In the past couple of years, I've just made so many memories with student council and setting up for events and all of that. I will definitely miss the swim team and all of the bus rides we take and all the fun we have at practices and just working hard and doing our thing. My plans after graduation are to go to UNK and to major in sports and recreation management and minor in event management.
All right, thank you.
All right, we'll now invite the Unified Bowling students and Miss Matuzak up.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Matuzak. I'm the head coach of Unified Bowling. We have just finished our 9th season of Unified Bowling. We've had Unified Bowling here in the district as long as it has been a part of an NSAA sport. Unified Bowling is a little unique because we start at the very end of fall season. So as all those fall sports are getting ready for districts, we're getting ready to start our season. And then we finish our season. State for Unified Bowling was yesterday. Actually, no, it was today. So obviously we did not make it to state this year because we're here because state is held in Lincoln. One of these years we're going to do it. Unified Bowling brings Special Olympics into the sports system here in the high school. So we have a mixture of students who have disabilities and students who do not have disabilities all bowling together. I'm going to tell you, it does take great team effort because we have 3 students bowling one game. So if you can imagine how discombobulating that can be, because you have to remember the order that you're going in. And it's a great experience for all of our students. And I'm going to now let our students talk a little bit about it.
I'm Isabella. I'm winter. I play bowling for 4 years and I loved it. I enjoy playing with the regular ed kids and I love bowling.
My name is Gabby. I'm a junior. I've done unified bowling for 3 years. Something I like about it is that the people I see that it brings, it shows their true commitment to helping people. And one thing that it's impacted is knowing that I can be a leader for them.
Thank you.
All right, and now we'll invite Terry up for foundation report and some staff recognitions.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing from the foundation again this month. As always, we're excited to be awarding REACH grants. This past month, we visited McDonald School where they had requests for additional comfort seating for their classrooms. Then we went to Washington where Miss Nebraska, Rachel Warren, was finishing up her school-wide visits. So she was roller skating throughout the schools, which was a lot of fun for the students. And then we also provided Mrs. Simmons over at Washington with funds to support the 5th grade ambassador program. This was also our 50th REACH grant in the 3 years that we've been joint ventured with Wilkinson Companies, AKA Fat Dogs. So we're excited about that. We've given out over $41,000 worth of grants in the last 3 years. So I'm pretty proud of being able to help all those classrooms along the way. So tune into KNOP on Thursday to find out where we'll be this week. So we got a few more weeks left. And of course, the foundation is in the year-end giving phase of the year. We sent out some targeted appeals to donors, retired educators, and our community members. As always, the foundation remains committed to working closely with the district to align our efforts with the needs of our schools and to foster community-wide support for public education. So we appreciate working with you. The foundation is always excited to showcase employees of the district. So this month, Prairie Friends and Flowers, our longtime partner, was our sponsor for the month, not only for their bouquet that they do every month, but also for the swag bag. So I'm going to have some principals. We'll start with Mr. LaChapelle. You'll join me up here. I will have him talk about his 2 wonderful staff. Turn on that mic. Yeah. Whichever one.
Okay.
Okay.
Elementary.
Yeah, on the top.
There we go. Thank you. Light on means it works. Okay. All right. So we are honoring 2 staff members at our school. This month we have a certified staff and a classified staff. So the certified staff member that we are honoring is Miss Jalissa Langen. She teaches 1st grade at Eisenhower Elementary. She started last year, was her 1st year with us. She came to us from the Philippines and just hit the ground running. She's done a fantastic job. She's handling everything herself and only asked for help when definitely needed. And just, it doesn't matter the size of the class or the type of student, she's just going with it. When she was in the Philippines, she had classroom size of like 50 kids and would drive 45 minutes on a motorcycle to get to her class. So it's a little different venture here going to class. But yeah, she was nominated by all of our staff as our certified staff member of the month. And then our classified staff member is Miss Carly Swink. So Miss Carly started with us last year, about 2 months into the school year. She was they call them custodians at the high school. I call them engineers because they do a lot more than just custodian work. So she came to us. She wanted to get involved with students and kids. So we hired her as a special education paraprofessional. She this year works one-on-one with one student and then works with multiple students throughout the building. But then she also branches off and works with not just special ed students, but other students. And she hasn't even asked to do that. If a teacher asks her to do something, she's more than willing to do it. If we ask her to help cover in the office or any other things, talk with some parents, she's just so friendly. And she's just willing to help out wherever needed. She even just, if we know something's awry, she'll come up to me and just ask to, hey, you want me to just, okay, yeah, if you really want to, she's willing to do it. She is also in our in our para to educator program. So she's going to be one of us pretty soon. We'll figure out how soon we can get her there, but she'll actually be a certified staff member eventually for North Platte Public Schools. And just want to congratulate her. She's doing a fantastic job.
And now I'd like to have Dr. Tammy Eshelman come forward to talk about her two wonderful staff.
So I'll start with the one on top. So Mrs. Younghands, I just want to point out, is a North Platte High School grad. We'll keep all those stories for later. But if you know Mrs. Younghands, she brings a different energy. And those of you that got to come and celebrate with her, she was so excited to see you. She pointed out it's taken 12 years. But you need to know, like, good things come in time. So Mrs. Younghands, what I love about her and why we nominate her, Mrs. Fleck and I together nominated, was that she is a student advocate. So she has lots of students with lots of needs. And what she does is she advocates. And if you walk into her classroom, it is focused. They know that she loves them, but she also has expectations. So Mrs. Younghands, we appreciate all that you do. She also spends the spring season coaching soccer. So congratulations. And our next person to be recognized is Elizabeth Bielke. She also is a North Platte High School grad. What's really fun about her is she also attended Jefferson as a student, and her son Grayson, who's here, is also a second grader. So anyway, we are really proud to have Elizabeth. Here's what's a fun fact about Elizabeth is she followed in her mom's footsteps as the school secretary. I think I'm saying that right. It was right after. Yep. So here's what you need to know is Elizabeth has seen a lot of principals and she's made it a point that I'm supposed to stay for a little bit. But one of the things is she knows our family, she knows our staff, she knows our building. And that's a great asset for us to have when we're new to the building, but also for our families. And so I just appreciate all that she does for everyone in that building who come to visit, who are just working to make sure that our students have the best experience. And that starts in the office. So congratulations.
Great. Thank you. And of course, we have one other person on the list. I'd like Mr. Mills to join me up front, please.
Good evening. We're more than excited to honor Carol Hawley as our Employee of the Month for McKinley. Carol has demonstrated exceptional dedication, hard work, outstanding organizational skills in her role as the HR school administrative assistant. Carol consistently goes above and beyond ensuring the smooth operation of our school's HR department, handling both routine complex tasks with efficiency and grace. From managing employee records to assisting in recruitment processes, Carol has become an invaluable asset to our team. Your attention to detail, proactive communication, and ability to solve problems quickly have had a lasting positive impact on both staff and students. Carol has shown an unwavering commitment to excellence and always willing to lend a helping hand, ensuring that everyone's needs are met in a timely, professional manner. We at McKinley greatly appreciate Carol's positive attitude, collaborative spirit, and high standard service she brings to the role every day. Carol truly exemplifies the values of NPPSD, and we're proud to have her as part of the team. Congratulations, Carol. Thank you for your outstanding contributions. Oh, yeah.
Here we go. Squeeze together.
Should come down by hand.
Got it?
Got it. Thank you.
Congratulations. Yay.
Boy.
I had a cousin on each side of the family here tonight,
Really? Which one?
Lane and Carly.
Really? Wow. Clean hours. Now we have our.
See ya.
Okay, before we move to the consent agenda, we also wanted to take a few minutes tonight to recognize Matt. So I'm gonna try not to get too emotional, but Matt has been a really good board member in the 8 years that he has served, and we appreciate the insights and just your leadership that you've provided in different ways. And also, hopefully this doesn't embarrass you too much, but Matt has, I think in the time that he's been on the board, I think all 3 of your children have been bored, haven't they? So the board would like to present you with a package. And then the district has provided you with a plaque. Memory of your service. All right. We will now move on to the consent agenda. And on the consent agenda, we have approved the minutes of the November 11th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Education, accept the resignation of Brian Yannicki effective on or about May 15th, 2025, accept the resignation of Mark Mesner effective on or about May 15th, 2025, approve the resignation of Patricia Sainer effective on or about May 15th, 2025, approve the teaching contract of Kay Fabricus effective January 3rd, 2025. For some reason, I've got to get this to just a second. Okay. Approve the teaching contract for Jasmine Smith effective for the 25-26 school year. Approve the teaching contract of Claire Burke effective for the 25-26 school year. Approve the teaching contract of Charles Foster effective for the 25-26 school year. Approve the administrative contract for Dr. Damon McDonald effective July 1st, 2025. And approval of the financial claims and reports, which this month it was Skip and I that participated in that. So is there any questions or discussion that needs to happen?
No. I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Cindy O'Connor.
Aye.
Dave Foster.
Aye.
Angela Blake.
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, we'll move on to our report and that passes. We'll move on to our reports and discussion items, and we'll have our AQuest presentation. Mrs. Carlson and Mrs. Douglas. Great. Thank you.
Good evening. So Mrs. Douglas and I are going to walk you through our AQuest classification. AQuest stands for Accountability for a Quality Education System Today and Tomorrow.
Okay, the AQuest system is built on 3 domains and 6 tenants. So the 3 domains are the leadership domain, success, access, and support domain, and then teaching, learning, and serving domain. And underneath each of those domains, there are 6 tenants. Under the success, access, and support domain, we have educational opportunities and access, transitions, positive partnerships, relationships, and success. And then under the teaching, learning, and serving domain, educator effectiveness, student achievement and growth, and post-secondary career and civic readiness. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about each one of those.
So the AQuest system classifies schools and districts into 4 performance levels based on those domains and those areas that Mrs. Douglas just explained. So a rating of 4 is excellent. A rating of 3 is good. A rating of 3 is great. A rating of 2 is good. And a rating of 1 needs improvement.
All right, so the AQuest system utilizes the following process for classification. So the first one is the status indicator. I'll let you talk about that, Vicki.
Yeah, so basically this chart is what I handed out to you with the explanations. And so we're going to walk you through how the state calculates classifications and the various tenants and the domains that they utilize to do so. So step 1 in the classification system is strictly based on what is called status. So you receive right away a status score based upon your percent of students that are proficient. Which means of all students in our entire district, all students that are eligible who scored either on track or higher in the current year's statewide math and English language arts assessment. So those would be our accountability assessments that we do every spring in grades 3 through 8, which is our NSCAS growth, and then also our high school, which is the ACT.
All right, then step 2 looks at these 4 categories. The first category is the educational opportunities and access. That one is divided between chronic absenteeism and a reduction in that, and then progress towards English language proficiency. So the chronic absenteeism, it is set on the 21-22 school year. They gave us a baseline rate, and then our goal is to improve by 5% of that baseline rate. How they define chronic absenteeism is that a student misses 10% of the days that they are in attendance. So it's their entire span of enrollment. So for example, if you have a student that only attends our schools for 10 days and they miss one of those days, they would be counted as chronically absent because it is just 10% of the total days that they attended. Then the second half of that category is the progress towards English language proficiency. And that just measures the percentage of English language the progress towards their English language proficiency in that category on the ELPA 21 assessment.
That is one of the tenets that you can receive a +1 based on that calculation, depending on where you fall in that calculation. That is one of the areas that after they have calculated your status based on the results of that first area of calculation, you could potentially receive a +1 bump up in your status score. The next area then is called transitions, and transitions for reporting purposes only is for each school district and or high school, the 4-year and the extended 7-year graduation rates from the previous year. So the thing that's important to note here is that they are technically a year behind in this calculation because by the time the classifications and the calculations come out from the Nebraska Department of Ed, they are utilizing the previous year's graduation rating. So for this year's classification, they would have used the graduating class cohort of 23 and not the graduation cohort of 24. Okay, so it's a year behind essentially.
Okay, and then the next category is the positive partnerships, relationships, and success. And how they measure that is they look at the student discipline rate, and that is calculated on the students who did not receive an out-of-school suspension compared to our entire enrollment. So that is, that tenant also is for review purpose only. It's not used in the calculation of your status score. It really is just provided overall by district and then by building so that we can use that data internally on our site plans and to make goals in that area.
The final category is student achievement and growth. This calculates 3 different areas. The growth indicator is the percentage of NSCAS and NSCAS alternate assessment scores within the school or district that showed an increase compared to the same individual scores in the previous year with the same subject. So essentially what they're looking for there is the percent of students that are showing growth from their previous year's score in the same content area. The second area under student achievement and growth is the non-proficiency rate. The non-proficiency rate is basically calculated by dividing the number of eligible ELA math assessments with scores in the lowest performance range by the total number of eligible ELA math assessments for the current year and the previous 3 years, and then combined into a non-proficiency trend line. So essentially what they're looking for there is we want to see the non-proficiency rate trend line going down, because that means fewer kids are not proficient. So that tenant is that little area is sometimes confusing. So we want to always see that our 3-year trend line is actually decreasing. The final part of that calculation is just straight up science proficiency. So the science proficiency indicator is defined by the percentage of eligible statewide assessments scored at a proficient level or above when compared to the school district's total valid NSCAS, NSCAS alternate, and NSCAS ACT science assessments. So it takes all of those areas of science. So that would be our grades 5, our grades 8, our alternate assessment students, along with our science proficiency in the ACT. And that's what that calculation score makes up.
And then the last bit of information is just our participation number. And that is also just for reporting your purposes only, not in the calculation, but it is for our own information, just percentage of students that participate in the statewide assessment. So all of those factors then go into our calculation, and that's how we get our final classification of either excellent, great, good, or needs support to improve. Okay. And then this is how we rated as the overall for our district. We got a good rating. We had 2 schools that were excellent, 2 schools that were rated great, and 7 schools that were rated good, and no schools that were in the needs improvement category.
So we would entertain any questions that you might have. Otherwise, that brings us to the end of our classification presentation. You can find all of the results. I believe Dr. Rhodes shared that information with you when all that information was released finally publicly to the state. So you can find that information on the Nebraska Education Profile just by Googling Nebraska Education Profile, and it will take you right to the classification. Not only will you be able to see the state overall results, but you can do various districts across the state, and you can take a look at each one of our buildings as well in terms of classification.
So I guess a question I have is the only information that is a year behind, I guess, is it just that the graduation cohort is the only one that is older data? Everything else is from last year.
Yep, from last school year.
Okay.
And then we get this year's next year.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the graduation cohort of 24 will be what will be in the calculation for the spring's classification rating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head, and I know we could go back and pull this up, but I thought you guys might know how those final scores of excellent, great, good, none, and needs improvement, how those compare to where we were at last year? Did we see some schools increase, or how did we?
Probably one of our biggest celebrations is we had one school that was in a needs improvement category, and we have 0 schools in needs improvement. So that was really exciting to see. So we'll be
sharing more information at the committee of the whole. We'll have more of the specific and detailed chart analysis and sort of our trend lines so that you'll be able to see that. And I think that that's helpful because there's a lot of really good celebrations, not only in terms of the classifications, but also our assessment results overall.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking I was
Yeah.
remembering, but I agree. That's worth celebrating. for
Yeah,
sure.
it's
So thank
definitely
you.
worth celebrating. It's always exciting to see us have a 0 next to needs improvement that we have no school
Agreed,
specified.
agreed. And then we had the 2 that were excellent and 2 that were great.
Mhm.
I thought that was really good in comparing them from past. Yeah, I thought that was excellent. Yeah.
So when you guys get this information, do you compare it over the last 3, 4, 5 years and then just and you're able to see trends as far, because I know the information that we received from Dr. Rhodes, he had a bar graph. And so there, obviously some years that schools were up and schools were down and so.
So we compile all that. Mrs. Douglas and I put a couple of spreadsheets together. And so we have been tracing historically since AQuest began in the classification. So we have all of our district trend data along with every building's classification data as well, including all of the NSCAS and assessment results. And then we've taken that and obtained additional data that is not accessible on the Nebraska education profile so that we can also begin looking at our subgroup data. And that's Mrs. Douglas put that particular sheet together. And then last week we presented all of that information to our administrative council and our administrators so that they can now take that data and go back and start incorporating that into their discussions as they work and continue to build their SMART goals within their building site plan.
I just want to say thank you to the 2 of you, and I know we have a couple principals here as well. So to you and ADCO, I know this has been a target for us this year, and you guys have worked extremely hard on this. So I appreciate everything you guys have done, and the 2 of you as well. Thank you for working hard to see these scores.
Thanks. Thank you.
I think what you'll see in the future when we continue to develop our building site plans is this component that is NSCAS related. Particularly obviously at the elementaries and the middle level. ACT it's a little bit more difficult to really set goals around. So, for many years, the district has set tier 1 goals for all of our buildings. And so we really haven't given our teachers an opportunity to really dive into state level data and make some professional decisions on where they think their particular classroom should be. So that is something that is different. I did share one of our building site plans with you several weeks ago. I would recommend jump back in and take a look at that because now there will be some NSCAS goals that'll be in that site plan as well. And then in terms of data, we really, for me, it's all about cohort data. So I want to see how 3rd grade did, and then this year's 4th grade. I want to look at last year's data and be able to make some professional decisions on where my kiddos can be then on the spring NSCAS. So a little bit different situation than what we've been in before. What makes this state level data so frustrating, I think, from an administrative standpoint, is you don't get it until November. And then initially, there's a window of opportunity that this is all embargoed information. Of course, we go through attendance information and we go through some different components that are uploaded from our Infinite Campus program to make sure everything is correct in terms of what the state is receiving. And initially, when we got this, we actually had 3 excellent schools, I believe. And in the matter of a week after the state had scrubbed data once again, we had one of those buildings that had dropped based probably on what the statewide grade level had done or something along those lines. So it's always kind of hard to set goals in the middle of the year, but we are going to ask our buildings to do that and our classroom teachers to do that as well. So we just want a little bit different focus as it relates to the state assessment.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll turn some time over to Mr. Simpson for our monthly financial and budget report.
Thank you very much. And here, I'm just getting a few minor things taken care of. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to Brandon Peterson. He has my new banner on the top, which really, I'm trying to change it up in the last 6 months I've here, just to create a little bit of opportunity to first showcase students. And Brandon gets a bunch of pictures, as well as a few other people get pictures. So I'm going to try to put those on my front cover because that's what we're here for, is the students. As well as you look at the data, I always show the enrollment comparison of what our last Friday enrollment officially was to where we currently stand, so you can get a better idea, not only using the numbers, but as you look on page 5 and 6, sort of the enrollment for the high school, the 2 middle schools, and then obviously our K-5 enrollment. And you can take a look at that and get a sense of where we are with our student enrollment so that we can know moving forward what we need to do. Next of all, I want to address just a real quick snapshot, as I always do, the comparison of the budget that was adopted to what we've currently actually spent. We should be at around 25%. I know on certain circumstances, and I'll mention those here in a little bit, that we are above it. For example, in our QC Puff, we were paying off our bonds, so that's why you're seeing the large amount, or 66%. They're due in December, and we cut the check here just in November to make that payment around December 15th. So that's why you're seeing a few of those costs increase. Next of all, on the comparison of our net assets for the district, I want to point out one thing. And on page 9, this year, it was asked of me last month about why certain costs, especially in the bills, increased. And it was because we doubled up on Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's just how they bill. So it reminded me that I wasn't picking up Blue Cross Blue Shield in the payroll part. So as you can see on page 9, that I'm showing how much we're going to pay out on a monthly basis to Blue Cross Blue Shield. So when you go down to the comparison of net assets, all of a sudden it looks like we're 900,000 more. Well, that's not the case, because when you calculate it out, I have to add back in the Blue Cross Blue Shield for last year, and I'm going to make those changes moving forward. So I put just some number comparisons on my sheet just for your information, showing the new comparison of salary for 23 and salary for 24, where we can see the variance is 185,000 for salary variance. And then obviously the bills were 576,000, but that's because we had a few transactions cleaning up the remaining Essers or Eisenhower construction that we were doing. We had obviously the windows from Steels to get taken care of. We did work at the welding shop at the high school that we had to do. And then this month, we had paid our first payment to the city in comparison to previous years. So just few items that were occurring in November of this year that didn't occur last year. And that's why you're seeing the difference accordingly. And then finally, always taking a look at our cash flow. The big piece is we're dealing with grants always. We've been contacting them every month. They're finally completing their process of approving our Title I, our IDEA, and then a few of the minor grants that we're trying to get taken care of. But we've had to continually ask them to take a look at it and get it taken care of. So hopefully we can get that line shifted more right in line with where we've been in the past in December. Questions? Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to the legislative update.
I'll just point out a couple of, or do you want to go? I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead, Mr.
Just the high level items, because we've had multiple meetings with our various groups. I was at a NASBO meeting, and then Dr. Rhodes and I were on a GNSA meeting, and Skip was on NASB. But I just want to remind the board, it's a 90-day session from January 8th through June 18th. I'll say June 11th, because then it's like a week and a half until they come back in if they do have to approve bills. And then there's 17 elected legislators coming in. New coming in. And a lot of our groups feel positive about their view on local control, but that's, we're going to obviously watch going through. GNSA, the first meeting is January 15th. At the NCSA office at 3 p.m., as well as a senator reception at 5 p.m. And then right now, all of them are talking about the chairs will remain the same. We weren't hearing anything different. And then finally, for my purposes, the state is looking at a $432 million deficit. So that'll be one of the focus items that we'll be watching.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that. We're kind of in the planning stages right now, so we'll be pretty active participants and advocates with GNSA as we go through. And that was just kind of a pre-planning meeting that we had last week via Zoom. 2 of the 4 governor priorities for this legislative session definitely have the possible impact on schools. One of those is the sports and spaces. Last year, that was LB 575, the calc bill on restrooms and locker rooms. And then of course, genders in activities. And so that will come back, and I'm quite sure it'll be a priority bill from Senator Kauth. And then of course, the other one deals with property tax relief and really looking at the components of the TIOSA formula. And the governor and his financial office have done a little bit of research on that, and they put some information together. The governor and his staff are working with Millard Public Schools, Lincoln Public Schools. I believe maybe Bennington is on there as well, and then some smaller schools, just to really look at school finance and the impact of the loss of state aid and what that does to property taxes in those districts. So, we'll continue to keep an eye on that as we go through. And then probably the biggest thing that happened during the interim hearings was one on land grants. And so for us, that's state apportionment. Stuart, what's that number for state apportionment?
Right around 600,000.
Yeah, about 600,000. So there was a lot of discussion about selling those sections that are across the state, and really for us, and I think most school districts, we would say let's keep that land grant in there, because actually we get more money paid through state apportionment than if it was just on the property tax rolls, and you never know exactly where that's going to fall within your district. So I don't think that's going to go anywhere. And I think with that,
they backed off on that after the hearings. I don't have much more to add. My group met on November 20th before the state convention started. And the biggest issue was the 17 new senators. But also a lot of the bills that came out last year will come back, specifically that deal with school funding and where they come from. And again, the governor's big push is that. But as they talked about, when they had their special session, they didn't get near as much done as they thought they would for a variety of reasons. So depending on the bills. Now, I do know that Speaker Arch has asked all of them to limit the number of bills that they put into the legislature at 20 apiece. But you still take 20 times 49 and you see how many bills there will be. But whether they hold to the 20 or not, some people last year had 60 bills. that they introduced. So we'll have to see.
Okay, anybody have any questions or anything else to add? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Public questions and comments may take place at this time in the agenda. Individuals who want to address the board must complete a guidelines for public comments form with the date, topic addressing, name, address, and the name of any organization you represent, and give it to the board clerk prior to the meeting. All right. So we will then move on to the action items. And the first action item is I have requested reimbursement for mileage for traveling to the state school board conference. So
I'll make a motion to approve the reimbursement for Joanne Lundgren for mileage for the NASB conference.
I second.
Aye.
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 abstain.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we will move on to the request for approval of the 25-26 school calendar. And I'll turn some time over to Dr. Rhodes to address.
So we had proposed this calendar through discussion during the November meeting. It has a start date for students, our kindergarten through ninth grade students on the 13th, and on the 14th, the first day for sophomores and through seniors would be on that Thursday. The last day of school for students would be 13. That gives us a total student day count of 174. That is a little bit less than what we've had this year. This year, we're at 175.5. But in working with our building principals and our advisory council group, as well as our NPA officers, we ended up having a lot of discussion about half days. And so we do have 3 half days in this year's calendar. Next year's calendar, this proposed calendar does not have any noon dismissals. It has no half days. 2 of those half days this year are prior to parent teacher conferences. So this will give our teachers a little bit more time during the 25-26 school year to prepare for parent teacher conferences. The other thing we heard from our teachers association was to have a little bit shorter first week. And so we did move that back to Wednesday for a student start date. And then, of course, again, sophomores, juniors, and seniors will come in on that Thursday. And teachers also requested to have one more day before we brought students in. So we had 3 days, and with this calendar, it has 4. So everything else is fairly commiserate with the calendar that we have for this school year. Angela had a great question after the November board meeting about those kind of long winter months, and there's not much for breaks in there. But the difference between this year's calendar and next year's calendar is we do have the Monday after winter conferences as a no student, no teacher day. We did not build that into the 25-26 calendar, primarily because Easter is so early this year. So, or next year, excuse me, in 2026, that Easter holiday actually falls on April 5th. And so that actually it's bumped up a couple weeks from what it is this school year. So we're at 185 days for teacher days. Again, 174 student days. The quarters and the semesters match up nicely to where we don't have a lot of differences in terms of more days first semester versus second semester. And that's something that we had talked about with our teachers as well.
Are there any other questions?
I move to approve the 2025-2026 school calendar.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And that passes. So we will move on to the request for a line of credit. Mr. Simpson?
You have all the documents that we've worked out with Rusk Land on the line of credit. We did this last year. A lot of points we want to, last year, once again, we were dealing with grants, trying to get them in. We expend them first, trying to get them in from the state. This year, it seems a little bit greater than we've had in the past. Second of all, though, I just want to remind you, the board did a really good job in regards to what they wanted to do on the budget and increasing our reserves. I just want to say, though, that that property tax request will not go into effect until January 1. So we're still dealing off of, if you want to say, last year's taxes coming in. So hopefully we can start building those reserves and put the district in a better financial system here in the future years.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
This is kind of part question and kind of part just comment to build off of what you have shared, Stuart. Because I know this is something I've expressed concern about in the past, and obviously we need to make sure that we're meeting payroll and taking care of our people. And I think that we do have a better plan in place in the future, and we're just kind of trying to get through until we reach that new plan. But could you share with us, for instance, if the board did not approve a line of credit, what that would look like, what those consequences might be, just so that that information is out there?
Yeah, I'm not going to pull it up on the screen, but when you looked at the net assets, what we do is combine all bank accounts into one. Right now, we were sitting at the end of November at 800,000. Now, I want to clarify, due to the timing of the state aid coming in, we didn't get that posted to the bank account until November 1. That was just wires coming in. So you could say that we would be at 1.7. We're starting to get some of those title money coming in. So that was roughly around 500,000. So 1.7 and 500,000 will be 2.2 million. Our payroll is 3.8. We would still be $1 million short. So that would cause us some issues in regards to how we were going to fund payroll at December 20th. And then the thing will be is that then we'll get our first state aid payment for special ed, which will be 80% of what we requested. And so that will be an interesting number because obviously our sped costs went up, but we don't know that number until it's actually comes in for the first time on the 20th. So we got a lot of variables playing in on how they're going to wire to us, but it's always going to be right after payroll's done.
So that the sped reimbursement is basically right at the same time as payroll. Is that correct?
Yep.
So is there potential that, if that money comes in right away and it's substantial enough, would we be able to pay off that line of credit fairly quickly, or what's that look like?
Yeah, so what I did last year is that we'll just use the same example. We needed the money. I got the money on the 18th because that's when we go through the payroll, we submit everything to the bank. And then as we got those funds in that covered the line of credit, I transferred the money back within 2 to 3 days or whatever the amount, whatever the timeline was, so we can get it taken care of. So we don't hold on to those funds in the line of credit. So anytime we were at that point, I would get it, but then as I got money coming in, whether it was state aid, sped state aid, or other grants, then that money would go back in there. So I never held it for 2 or 3 months because of that.
Okay, perfect. And then with our new plan and budget and tax requests moving forward, the idea would be that we're building our own reserves so that if that comes up, we essentially can loan money to ourselves from our reserves to meet payroll and then pay that back in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect.
Good question.
So essentially, I mean, when we do tap into this, I mean, our interest is fairly minimal because we're talking about 2 to 3 days worth of interest. How many times this past year did we have to tap into the line of credit? Do you
I
remember?
tapped into it in December and then in March and April because those are our lean months. And then as soon as I got money in, I was able to pay it back. April would be a little bit on the questionable side only because that's when the lowest point of reserves are. And I'd have to go back and take a look at that one. But I know in November and in February and March, it was maybe, 5 days at the most, and then I was able to pay it back.
I think that last one, I had claims audit when that interest payment came through.
Right.
On that last one. And I want to say that one was probably our highest interest payment. And I want to say it was around 11,000. Does that
Yep.
sound right?
Yep.
On that one. So just for context there.
So about how much are we paying in interest?
We're paying, well, last year was the first time we had a line of credit, so it was $11,000 for the total amount of interest that we had to pay on the line of credit for last year.
Any other questions?
I thought his explanation from Emily's question was very good. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stuart. And I just want to say before anyone makes a motion, I will vote in favor of this because obviously we don't have a choice. We have to pay our people. And I don't want anybody to have any feelings of uneasiness about getting their paycheck, especially in December. But I do want to say, like, I'm very glad that we're moving away from this practice and that in the future. Hopefully this is the last time maybe we have to make this vote, so.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Do we need to read the whole resolution? That we've done in the past. All right, I'll go out with a bang here. Whereas the Board of Education of North Platte Public Schools District, Lincoln County School District 56-0001, the board and the school district respectively desires to obtain financing from Nebraska Land Bank, the bank, to pay the school district's operating costs and other lawful purposes, subject to the terms of the proposal submitted by the bank to the school district, a copy of which is attached here to the proposal, and subject to the terms and conditions of a tax anticipated loan agreement and line of credit promissory note to be prepared by the bank, collectively the agreement. And whereas the school district may borrow money to the amount of 70% of the unexpected balance or unexpended balance of the total anticipated receipts of the general fund, special building fund, bond fund, or qualified capital purpose undertaking fund for the current school fiscal year and the following school fiscal year. And whereas the school district may execute and deliver an evidence thereof its promissory notes, which it is authorized and empowered to make and negotiate, bearing a rate of interest set by the board and maturing not more than 2 school fiscal years from the date thereof. And whereas such notes before they are negotiated shall be presented to and registered with the school district's treasurer, shall be payable out of the funds collected by the school district in the order of its registry after the payment of prior registered warrants, but prior to the payment of the warrant subsequently registered, except that if both warrants and notes are registered, the total of such registered notes and warrants shall not exceed 100% of the unexpended balance of the total anticipated receipts of the general fund, special building fund, bond fund, or qualified capital purpose undertaking fund of such district for the current school fiscal year and the following school fiscal year. And whereas the board believes it is in the school district's best interest to accept the proposal and obtain financing on the terms and subject to the conditions set forth therein. Therefore, be it resolved, the board empowers and consents to the terms set forth in the proposal. Board authorizes, empowers, and directs the following individuals to do the following. 1, the superintendent, executive director of finance, facilities, and operations shall negotiate and finalize the agreement on terms and conditions consistent with the proposal and the initial amount of $5 million with the option to increase such amount to $10 million as provided in the proposal with a maturity date of September 30th, 2025, and with interest at a rate of 4.85%. 2, the board president and board secretary shall execute, acknowledge, and deliver on behalf of the school district the agreement and all other documents and instruments required by the bank in connection therewith, including but not limited to all promissory notes, security agreements, and financing statements. 3, the board president and board secretary shall execute all other documents and take all other actions as may be necessary to exercise the rights and perform the school district's obligations arising under the agreement, including but not limited to presenting to the board treasurer for registration any promissory note or any other and or other documents desired or required by law. And 4, the following individuals / employment positions are hereby authorized to request advances or draw upon the loan superintendent and executive director of finance, facilities, and operations.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And that passes. All right, so we are to our action item on the sale of Osgood Elementary. This is something that we have been discussing for a number of months now. Turn it over to Dr. Rhodes and Mr. Simpson for any additional information.
Well, I think just for review, that's originally was built in 1960. There was additions in 1977. And then some renovations in 2004, I believe, or 2001, one or the other. It's about a little over 17,000 square foot facility. And it sits on 4.83 acres of ground. Original capacity of that building was 138 students, single track, K through 5 at the time. And currently, in terms of where our capacity could be across our 7 elementaries, we have 545 student seats open. At the middle level, it's about 290 between Madison and Adams, and at the high school, about 457. We have about 1140 at the high school, and that building was built for 1,600. So again, when we're looking at space in terms of potential growth, at the elementary level, we have about 545 available seats that we could meet the needs of students at the elementary level. Questions?
How long's it been since we've had students?
The last school year we had students, and there was 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic.
And I just want to say on record before we get further into discussion, I am recusing myself from discussion and for vote on this item due to potential conflict of interest. But if the board were to have any questions for me outside of that, I'm happy to answer.
I had a lot of people questioning us being able to like bring some of our newer students who are English as a second language and put them in that classroom. And I just want to make sure that I say it on record that we talked about inclusive, I can't say it. Anyways. And so we don't want to separate them. And I thought that was a really good comment because that just, I mean, that kind of opened my eyes to some things. And so that building being where it's at, it's also harder for people who have like one vehicle to get out there. And so with what we are paying for that a year, it's kind of just throwing our money away right now.
And if we would agree to sell it, did we decide it would be in the spring?
Yes. Yep.
I thought that. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. And when we met with commercial investments, there was not Robbie did not give any type of indication that a specific time of year was better than the other than obviously you stay away from the winter months. But he certainly thought a spring sale would be just as good as a fall sale or even a summer sale for that matter. And as a reminder to the board, as we look at this, that is part of the motion is to be able to work with commercial investments for the auction of that property. And just a quick reminder, then they take care of all the marketing. They will look at different auctioneers and they will choose the best auctioneer to auction that property. I think we would really highly encourage commercial investments to use that same process that they had used during Hall, where they took a lot of time on the day of the auction and people regrouped a little bit and got on the phone with people. And, and by the end of the auction, I think we got a fair price for that hall property. And again, if you remember from KSB in that memo that Steve Williams had put together, we do have an obligation to our taxpayers to try and get fair market value on that. And so you just can't arbitrarily even gift it to an organization in our community or an entity. There's some Nebraska Supreme Court cases that have actually gone against school districts who've tried to do that in the past. So
as far as playground equipment, and I know there's been some conversation about the art that exists out there, what would that all stay with the building or?
well, I think one of the things we would have to do with maintenance and facilities, Mr. Simpson and myself, we'd certainly want to have to do and go through several walkthroughs out there to determine what is functional and what could be used. And certainly if there's a need for the district to keep that equipment, we will keep it. We do have a few things that are stored out in that building that we'll have to go through and you know, maybe move to the Cohagen building that we use for storage or some other place in the district. The other thing I would mention is we are working with Head Start coordinator to relocate her office. And then I did meet with Val Hyde, Communities for Kids, on Friday, and we're working on her office space and some of her storage that'll be necessary. So we're not displacing anybody. We're going to have office space for those two people for sure.
I think that I appreciate the process with which we've handled this, because I think when we first talked about this, I think there was a lot of reaction, and I think people had some concerns. I think the fact we've given it some months and been able to get some more information out there about the costs that we are incurring at this time, and how even financially moving forward, if we were to need it for students, that it doesn't make sense to use that building. We've got plenty of space, as we've talked about. And so I think that's been good. This is something that I've been probably contacted about more than a lot of other things during my time on the board. But once I've had an opportunity to explain, you know, here's why. And like Angela said, some of the ideas that people had maybe looked good or sounded good, but once we talked about our, you know, the process we have here at North Public Schools and why maybe that wouldn't work, I think people understood that. So I appreciate Dr. Rhodes. I know you've worked on getting the word out and spreading some information, so I think that's been good. I mean, I've said it the last couple of meetings, but to me, this just doesn't. This is, I think, a good financial decision. I know we talked about the cost of it. The other thing I started to think about too is, did that, whatever the cost you gave, did that include our property insurance? Because I assume this will reduce our premium, I assume.
Yeah, I assume it would reduce. Obviously, our biggest costs, and there's the high school in Adams and Madison. Those are the big ones, but we will still get a little bit of savings from our insurance company on that basis.
And Stuart, would you just remind us where the money goes if we do sell this?
Because it is a building and it was built by building funds, that goes back into the building fund for other projects. So deemed by the school
Okay.
board.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve that the school district be authorized to sell Osgood Elementary School by auction, and be further authorized to contract with commercial investment services to auction Osgood Elementary School on behalf of the school district.
Second.
Roll call.
Abstain?
Aye.
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 And that passes. All right, so we will move on to the request approval of Dr. Rhodes, our superintendent's contract. So just as a note for the public and the board completed Dr. Rhodes' evaluation in October. We spent some time reviewing that in November. And then the executive team met with Dr. Rhodes and offered him an increase on his TSA compensation. Dr. Rhodes turned down any increase and said that while he appreciated the offer, he declined to any increase to his retirement or salary. He just is wanting to be conscientious of the budget and of the patrons in our district. And so he told us that he would like to just keep everything as it is as far as his salary and retirement goes.
So the only changes to this contract that is attached are obviously the dates. The dates have changed. All salary information is identical to this 24-25 contract. The only change in there is the days changed a little bit in terms of personal days and sick days, and we're doing that with all our contracts to match the teacher master agreement. And so those are the only changes contract with this contract for 25-26.
Also to remind the board is that Brandon had posted the Transparency Act for the superintendent on the website last Monday. So it only has to be for 3 days, but we just put it out there and leave it on the website forever.
And then additionally, the executive team with Dr. Rhodes, we've agreed that we're going to wait until the start of the new year to flesh out the goals because the desire of the board is that we do that in alignment with the new strategic plan. And so we won't have much more information on that until January. So we have a few things that we're kind of in a holding pattern with, but that's okay. So are there any other comments or questions?
No, I will say thank you, Dr. Rhodes, for your stance on that. And we just want you to know that we sure appreciate that. And yeah, I'm sure other people do as well. So.
Yeah, it means a lot.
I will make a motion to approve the contract of Superintendent Dr. Todd Rhodes as presented.
Second.
Roll call. Aye.
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 And that passes. All right, so looking at the future board calendar, Stuart, it's actually going to be me joining you on the radio tomorrow.
Just told me.
So Matt has other duties to attend to, so. And then we have our committee of the whole on December 19th and our next regular Board of Education meeting will be on January 13th.
It's not on here. We just solidified it today, but I just want to put it in the back of the board mind. On April 3rd, it's a Thursday, will be the NPA retirement party like last year. We moved it off committee of the whole and we did evaluate all of our activities to make sure it wasn't interfering with anybody.
Also, I believe in January, there's an ESU meeting that I am not seeing on here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, the board workshop, I believe, is January 15th.
15th.
Is it on
oh,
there?
is it? I'm not
No.
seeing that right now.
I don't see it. I'm pretty-
January 15th.
January
Okay.
15th, that's at North Platte High School, and that's a combination of issue 15 and 16.
So if you'll let Sheila know.
Can you email those out? Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 And we are adjourned.